At UFC 291 on July 29th, the leading promotion in MMA will bring one of the most stacked cards in recent memory to Salt Lake City, Utah for one hell of a night of fights.
UFC 291, Dustin Poirier takes on Justin Gaethje. The BMF title is back up for grabs between the number 2 and number 3 lightweights in the world.
Two of the toughest and most violent fighters in the world will go head-to-head once again in a guaranteed war that will crown the next BMF of the UFC. Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje are two guys who were born for this prestigious title.
This is the hardcore fans are going to tune in for this. It makes sense with who I'm fighting and our history in the sport, so let's go.
We're two of the best, most violent athletes in the sport. We both love the carnage, and we're both content with what we're about to put ourselves through.
But that's not all. In the co-main event is another fireworks show that will showcase two of the best knockout artists and hardest hitters in the world, as former middleweight champion Alex Pereira moves up to light heavyweight to take on the former champion of this division, Jan Blachowicz. Hands of Stone finally meet the legendary Polish Power in what will be one of the most explosive fights the UFC can ever put together.
This is the closest thing to a super fight that you can possibly put together. It's the closest thing that you can get while not having the actual thing.
There's never been a better guarantee of pure violence and show-stopping mentality than what we get here in these two dream fights to headline one of the most stacked cards imaginable on July 29th. With a lineup this good, we know we're in for one of the craziest nights in mixed martial arts history that will bring every fan to the edge of their seats with countless blood and guts wars in a career-defining night for some of the sport's best.
Mixed martial arts at its finest.
This is an inside look for UFC 291. First up, the 3-round co-main event showcase between a pair of former champions with everything to prove. In one corner, the light heavyweight fan favorite and one-time champion Jan Blachowicz will look to dispel any notions that he is past his prime by making one last push into the title picture. And if you remember just how unlikely his initial surge to UFC Gold was, you'd be a fool to count him out. His legendary Polish Power will indeed be in play. But in facing a fearsome opponent like Alex Pereira, the real question here will be just how well this former 205-pound King's chin will hold up if Poatan's legendary left hook finds its mark. Pereira might have lost some momentum after his brutal defeat at the hands of Israel Adesanya, but with this move up in weight comes an opportunity to wipe the slate clean. He no longer needs to make that harrowing cut down to the 185-pound limit. And the idea of a Pereira who isn't draining 20 pounds extra off his frame during fight week is a terrifying thought.
He's a giant. He's a big motherfucker, and he hits hard. He's a scary dude. He would definitely be performing better if he didn't have to cut that weight.
Did you see the size of the fella? Just his facial features are bigger. His feet and hands and forearms are massive. Who let this guy in?
Blachowicz is no slouch in the stand-up department either. His punching prowess is iconic within the pantheon of modern light heavyweights.
I'm just happy that I can fight against him in my division, so you have to be ready for legendary Polish Power.
But his underrated technical skill, the very thing that carried him to victory over Israel Adesanya, that may be a deciding factor in this highly intriguing pairing. It's a gunfight, folks, the type of matchup that could, and likely will, end without a moment of warning.
I mean, Mr. Polish Power versus Mr. Poatan Pereira. I mean, come on, this fight's sensational. Two fantastic strikers.
And while your initial read on this bout may see you take one look at Poatan's insane KO ability versus Blachowicz's aging chin, let's not make the mistake of forgetting just how massive an advantage Blachowicz will have in the wrestling department. How one takedown may be sufficient to put Pereira in a world of danger. This is no middleweight wrestler shooting on your legs. This is a large 205-pounder who isn't as far removed from a heavyweight frame as you might think. And with that threat of the takedown come opportunities to land on the feet. Pereira can end this fight in a split second, but Jan Blachowicz can do the exact same thing. And arguably, he has more ways to win here. It's a stylistic pairing of major significance to the 205-pound division, and it should serve up the perfect starter before UFC 291's tantalizing main course.
25 minutes on July 29th. That's all that matters. What's going to happen, I don't know. I'm preparing for 25 minutes of hell.
What's understood don't need to be explained. Something nasty is going to happen July 29th.
It's kind of shocking how consistently successful this ongoing series of violent lightweight pairings is continuing to be. No matter who they match up, the lightweight division simply cannot miss when it comes to pairing up these all-action fighters.
The most stacked division in UFC history is happening right now at 155 pounds. You don't exactly have to put on your Colombo rain jacket to realize how loaded 155 is right now.
But one matchup has eluded us over the last few years. It is indeed a fight we have already seen, but it's not a stretch to say that both Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier are remarkably different fighters since their initial clash in 2018.
This is a completely different fight. This is 5 years. We've both had our ups and downs. We both learned a lot, put a lot of camps in, have great teams.
That fight was 5 years ago. That is not even a factor. It won't be a factor July 29th. I'm not the same guy. He's not the same guy.
And when you stop to think about it, are there two fighters in the entire UFC that you could rely on to bring 5 whole rounds of electric action more than Poirier and Gaethje?
These are two of the most entertaining fighters on the roster in the lightweight division.
When you talk about bad motherfuckers, Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier come to mind immediately.
We've watched both men lose multiple times in the past, but somehow, some way, both men have arguably become even harder to defeat in recent years. Dustin's chin at 155 pounds is quite frankly ridiculous. And he has incredible defensive skills. His ability to block incoming shots and roll with punches is one of the biggest improvements he's made to his overall game. But there's some very peculiar magic afoot when it comes to the Diamond. In fact, that nickname has never been more apt. The man's chin is looking unshatterable these days. And that billing, without question, applies to Justin Gaethje too. And it's perhaps even more impressive because of how willingly he engages in the type of warfare that routinely gets lesser men knocked out. Justin has undergone an even more dramatic evolution than Dustin Poirier in recent years. And in fact, it was his 4th-round loss to Poirier that caused him to take a long look at himself, to step back from his role as the UFC's own king of violence and decide to take a more measured approach. Oddly enough, this has somehow made him an even more exciting fighter. Gaethje can be relied on to go further than any other athlete in this sport.
I'm the most exciting fighter that's ever stepped in that cage.
It's controlled chaos.
And Poirier has shown himself to be more than capable of outlasting even the most battle-hardened soldiers in the game.
I know I'm dangerous. I know I'm skilled everywhere. I know I can put it all together and beat anybody in the world on any given night. I just know I can trust myself.
Gaethje earned his reputation by inflicting a furious style of fighting on anyone who dares to stand with him. Poirier has earned his by breaking fighters who try to drag him into those depths. Say what you want about the idea of the BMF belt, but while Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz caused its creation through their shared status as a pair of hardened octagon warriors who also just so happen to have colorful, no-nonsense personalities, Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje have arguably lived by this code to an even greater extent.
You got two of the toughest men walking God's green earth fighting for the BMF championship on July 29th. UFC 291 is going to be an absolute banger from Salt Lake City. But all you got to do, guys, is look at the marquee, and when you see Dustin Poirier and when you see Justin Gaethje, you hit the buy button because these dudes guarantee fireworks.
There is no better matchup to bring this belt back for. There is no pairing that will inspire that type of anticipation from the fans. And with 5 rounds of action on the cards, all of a sudden, that unique belt that has been criticized and written off as a gimmick arguably has more value now than it ever did with those who previously pursued it. You want to call it the BMF title? Go ahead. But this is the Violence Weight Championship of the world, folks.
Talk about goosebumps. This is going to deliver. They are the biggest names in the world. They are coming to absolutely destroy one another. I can't wait for this one.